who here worked their butt off to achieve their dream, only to realize it's actually a nightmare. Worked my butt off to make it into the film industry. Now that I'm in it, I realize that it's nothing but 12+ hour workdays, exhausting personalities, and endless manipulation of the dream job mindset to make people work an unhealthy amount for not enough pay. I worked my butt off to get into making video games, changed my major, ate up a bunch of student loans, graduated, and made it. I was so proud of myself. I got a job as a 3D artist, which I loved at first, then migrated into doing world building, level design, and lighting, which I absolutely loved. But the games industry has all this crap talked about job conditions for a reason. It's crap pay, worse hours, and you grind more than any MMO. It killed me, and I only last a few years before I decided I couldn't do it. I have several friends who have moved on to bigger studios that only seem to compound the issue. Some friends work at smaller awesome studios, but still they have big layoff like once a year and crappy pay. I love making games, and still do it as a hobby, but absolutely crap dream job. Got a job as a railroader after spending close to 2 decades working for myself. The idea of job security, insurance, retirement and big checks was so tempting. Almost 10 years later, a private equity firm took over my railroad, and I don't know if I will work from week to week or have to move hundreds of miles to keep working. Not to mention the terrible lifestyle. I wish I had stayed self-employed. I mean, at least you know your old boss will always take you back. P. Chemistry graduate school. Research assistants have very little rights, and the professors are not trained in management. Each professor runs a tiny kingdom of serfs, and many are not benevolent rulers. I'm a janitor in a university building that is used mainly for research. The research assistants literally worked like slaves. Many are from China, and they are working from 8 in the morning until my boss leaves at 1 AM. They set up beds on their desks, and there are showers for emergencies they use when they don't go home. I don't think they are even making good money. Got a dream job with my favorite science-oriented non-profit organization. Their headquarters were so cool. There were ping pong tables and employee lounges with comfy couches and an on-site physician and a cool employee-only speakeasy in the basement, and the cafeteria had amazing food. A few months later, I woke up early one Saturday on a comfy couch in the lounge, nursing a small hangover from spending the previous night drinking in the cool speakeasy, grabbed breakfast from the amazing cafeteria, went back to my office to work another 11 hours, and realized that I hadn't been home in 6 days and was actually the most miserable I had been in my entire life. Well, that went south fast. Yes. Worked my butt off to retire early, way early, saved every penny I had and only focused on work. Every day, every free time was working. Now that I'm retired, I realize I have no family, no kids, no long-term adult relationships, no close-knit friends group. Feel a bit like Smorg, all alone with a mountain of gold. Success at money, not success at relations. All my life I've dreamed about moving to a big city. Got a job here, lots of friends, it seems all good. Then it became a nightmare. Traffic, rude people, living penniless because the utilities and the rent is so dang high. Can't get an apartment in the city center. The public transport is crap. I'm honestly thinking about moving back. Yeah, I've spent all my money for a year trying to create this drive-in theater for my community, and no one seems to know or care about it. I've been putting in $10 a week on Facebook ads for about 2-4 people to come each week. Not to mention using each of my Saturdays since about June to make cool blacklight designs for people to enjoy past getting a free movie. Also, I gave out free popcorn for a while. I posted on an Ask Reddit post a few weeks ago and got great attention, but not many people in my area seem to care. To be fair, people don't even go to regular movies like they used to. A naive part of me wanted to work in journalism as a writer and photographer. Without being overly explicit about my opinion about the media, I find it difficult to find what I will call information without an agenda. Went into marketing instead. No regrets at all. At least the agenda is straightforward in marketing and both sides realize it. Quit my previous job cause they wouldn't give me a team-led position. Got one where I currently work and it freaking sucks. I don't want to be responsible for all these bums. I just wanted more money. More money, more problems. The only thing that kept me alive since I was a kid was music. I remember trying to learn to play instruments, but my lack of patience and talent made it impossible to even play at local bars. So I had another idea. Like, hey, it would be nice to be in the business, but on the other side, help the artists instead. My life took weird turns. I eventually ended up moving to London and working with people I have always admired. This was my biggest dream coming true. I gave up after a few years, moved into a crap hole country that I come from. Few months later I meet this guy. We moved to another part of Europe. I work outside my field, still questioning my previous decisions and being sure that I was just immature. Missed a big chance that you only get once in a lifetime. So I start looking for a similar position again. It takes 4 years. Finally, a miracle happens and I can't believe how lucky I am. Fast forward 1 month, I pretty much want to shoot myself in the face again. Took a bite of crap pie and came back for seconds. I worked my butt off from the time I could say I wanted to go to college until I dropped out with 1 semester left. I was supposed to go to college and get a good job and be rich, because my parents had me when they were teenagers and didn't go to school. I didn't even know why I was there. I became so depressed I couldn't go to class or go to work or feed myself. Now I'll be working retail or real estate for the foreseeable future. It's not too late to transfer the credits and finish your degree. Pro sports here. Got a contract at 18 as a promising talent. Moved from the UK to USA. 2 years later was burned out and depressed. A combination of team management not listening to their athletes, living in a team house 4 guys to a room, no private space, and a general "you're lucky to be here, zip it and get on with it or get replaced" attitude drove me onto an emotional roller coaster. I could be flying an all-time high 1 minute, being berated by an angry Russian the next, having things I thought guaranteed being yanked from under my feet. It dug me into a deep mental hole which took me until very recently to get out of, a multiple-year recovery process. But I also met my best friend. I'm best man at his wedding next year to a girl he only met because of our sport. Traveled with all expenses paid for over half the year at a time, and got to come of age in a pretty crazy fun environment. It's no exaggeration to say it was both the best and worst time of my life. Guy I knew, diesel mechanic, early 40s, decided to become a maths teacher. Getting A-level maths in 2 years as a full-time student is hard enough. He did it in 1 year of night school while still working. Then it was a couple of years of teacher training. He eventually qualifies and becomes a maths teacher. 6 months later, he was driving coaches for a living. I get that. I thought I always wanted to teach math and science and didn't even get 6 months in with high schoolers before I noped out. Went into programming instead, but I'd even rather drive coaches or be a cashier. Oh me, master's degree in classical music from a fancy conservatory. Wanted to play in a full-time orchestra. I won an audition and took the job. I got really burned out by the internal politics, complacent attitudes of my co-workers, and terrible environment embodied by our tyrannical director. I quit after 5 years. Now I teach lessons and am a general ed substitute teacher. Way happier with the flexibility and environment. Plus I make more money. Flexibility. That is a metric I highly regard and encourage others to consider when deciding on some degree or certification. I spent every bit of my childhood and young adulthood learning to use technology so I could work with computers instead of people, only to wind up working with computers in a customer service capacity. I'm just waiting for Ted Danson to show up and drop the other shoe any day now. Get into programming. It's not too late. I only have to work with about 5 other people from my team on a regular basis, and often I'm working alone for days. It's blissful. I longed to major in one of my passions, art, music, languages, but was terrified of not being able to support myself after watching my mother struggle to raise us after the divorce. Also, mom very heavily pushed me into sciences despite my early inclinations in language so she could brag about having such smart daughters. Chose to work my butt off to get an engineering degree, civil, despite not having talent in math or physics. Never failed a class. Got degree. Got pay licensure. Make a nice salary. Absolutely freaking hate the job and work. I play in a community band once a week and paint on the weekends and wonder every dang day what the other path would be like. got into IT, expecting it to be a perfect industry for a tetchy but socially awkward person like me. I got in just in time for the industry to change from on-site direct hire IT guys to third-party contract with heavy customer service focus, where management is perfectly willing to throw you under the bus to make the customer happy. The industry shift literally happened right as I was entering the workforce. Honestly surprised they hired an American at all. Not me, my friend. He collected money for an electric scooter. When he got it 2 years later, they got banned from our country, and someone stole it. What country bans someone for an electric scooter? Wanted a city job. Took me 7 years to finally get a position that had opened up and the qualifications to back it up. Great benefits, great pay, the shittiest people and worst work ethic attitudes all around. That's not my job seemed like the motto there. It was just toxic all around. 2 weeks later I resigned. It was a dream to have a good paying city job. Frick what people think is a good job. I'd rather be surrounded by like-minded individuals. So here I am on Reddit. Got my bachelor's in psychology. Did some grad school. Couldn't find an internship. School didn't help me find one. Bachelor's level jobs were not what I ever wanted to do, and didn't pay well. Definitely not appealing. Now going back for a 2-year degree to hopefully be an eco tech. I hope so at least. I've almost maxed out my student loans. Same boat. Got my bachelor's in psych. Now I'm starting a rad tech program so I can get an actual job. The short version. Dreamed as a kid of being a rock star. Took about 10 years of playing worthless shows and printing CDs myself. Became a pro musician. Toured the USA a few years. Made decent money. Got to play with a lot of legends. 3 drug addictions. About half a year perpetually drunk. I legit don't remember how long it was. May have been closer to a year. An overdose. And 2 suicide attempts later. Turns out it wasn't quite what I thought it was going to be. The money was okay, but unless you've hit cultural icon status, it's not enough, because you have to pour so much back into marketing, printing, pressing, tour expenses, equipment, basically everything. It wasn't worth it to watch myself go slowly more insane every day. Reading this thread is making me wonder if going to law school is worth it. I have no idea what I actually want to do, so my parents said lawyers make $120 plus a year. This got me interested. All my hobbies and dreams require quite a bit of money, and I don't want to live like my family does now when I have my own family. But reading this thread, it's making me wonder if that's a really true and or even achievable. Lawyers who make that kind of money don't have time for hobbies. Don't go to law school if you're not passionate about it. Twice. Actually, first time was professional wrestling. Loved it, loved the physicality of it, loved performing. Kinda not thrilled at the damage left from concussions, bruises, and a potentially dislocated neck, which is an injury I didn't even know could exist before I went through it. Hated being away from my family so much. Miss it, but it wasn't worth it. Second time, chef. Again, love food, love cooking. Love preparing food for others, once a day or so. Not for 8-12 hours a day every day running your feet off all day long while getting screamed at from all angles. So I just sort of fell butt backwards into working at a newspaper. Turns out I love it. Never would have thought twice about it before. I work as a web developer and software manager at an enterprise company. Saying it's a nightmare would be some serious hyperbole for me, but there are days where I kinda miss my working at Staples, just throwing load, cashiering, and selling the occasional printer. I could completely and utterly shut off work when I clocked out and didn't have to worry or think about it. I had zero actual responsibility. Now, I'm never done with work. Even when we wrap up for the day, my mind is organizing what has to be done tomorrow, since we work at a pace that I would characterize as a brisk speed walk. We have to be organized and on point in order to hit deadlines and ensure quality standards. I do, in fact, lose a bit of sleep over work. Not all the time, but sometimes. The pay is worthwhile, but it's this sort of omnipresent worry that we haven't crossed our T's and dotted all our I's. I guess that's the nature of any kind of management and leadership role though. I bet my Staples GM felt the same way about his store. I always wanted to be a teacher. I'm grading papers right now and this is not hyperbole. I am considering just not doing it. Maybe just not showing up tomorrow. Maybe jumping off a bridge. I have given so much to my students over the years, and while it's true that many more have benefited from my tuition than those who have not, the ones that ignore me and do whatever they want are so incredibly frustrating at this point, more than 10 years in, that I just want to end it all. Sorry, that was a run-on sentence. I worked in cage-free dog boarding facility, 2 of them. I love dogs. Beware. If you are interested in working at one of these places or want to bring your dog there, they subtly abuse the dogs and fire anyone who crosses the thin line they have. I didn't get fired, I quit both because it's madness. Educate yourself and check the trainer facility's training methods. Always wanted to be in the army growing up. Well, I was a fat kid. I'm talking 350 when I graduated high school. Finally got my butt in gear. Fed down to 189 with just a diet and exercise. Got my associate's degree in the meantime. Joined the army, went infantry, and went guard so I could continue on with my education and get a commission. Here's the thing. The army sucks. I mean, I made some good friends. Has some crazy experiences and things of that nature, but honestly it sucked more than it was fun. I ended up serving out my enlistment. Left with no problems and never looked back. Nowadays I'm an EMS and I love it. The camaraderie is there. The cool stuff is there. The sleep sucks sometimes. And every now and then we get a call that's a little hairy. But honestly I wouldn't trade it for anything. Best of all, I get treated like an adult. I am currently on exercise in northern Canada. And your last sentence sums it all up for myself and those I work with. I am tired of being treated like a child. I am 38 years old. I have 3 kids, one is 20 years old, and I am a successful landlord of multiple properties. But I still can't go to the bathroom when I want without getting permission. I hate the army. It was my dream to be an archaeologist since before I could read. It was the first real word I learned to spell. I was very sick when I was little and I would obsessively watch history shows about archaeological discoveries and research. And it was basically my escape from reality and gave me real hope for the future. I worked hard to get a huge scholarship so I could afford to study abroad and got a grant for a field school in Ireland. I graduated with bars in anthropology with a focus in archaeology and international studies with a minor in Spanish. I got my MSc in Mediterranean archaeology and wrote a dissertation on complex societal change during periods of contact and transition in the Iberian Peninsula. Now I'm freaking stuck. I have sunk so much time and effort and money into applying for PhD programs and have a useless degree unless I have a PhD. I worked in cultural resource management for a hot minute, but it was torture. It is so corrupt, and seeing the amazing sites and artifacts that we found be destroyed without us even fully excavating or recording broke my heart, let alone the horrible mistreatment of Native American sites and remains. Basically, these firms do the bare minimum the law requires and complain the entire time rather than approaching it with the respect and care it deserves. I've been trying to figure out what to do next, but I'm so lost and have absolutely no drive. Trying to freelance or teach English online are basically my only options, and neither is logistically great for me at the moment. Do I get a second master's in a field someone will actually employ me in? Am I screwed? No one can help answers these but me, and I'm just ready to give up honestly. Frick man. That sucks. I've been thinking recently about going back to study for masters or a postgrad qualification in social cultural anthropology, but I'm probably just going to be wasting my time and money. Med school. I worked hard and got into med school, which was great because I really like medicine and I'm pretty good at it. But now that I am nearing the end, I feel like I made a mistake because due to a combination of factors, including having had to have taken time off during school a couple of times and the fact that I'm not a US citizen and don't have a green card, means that my chances of getting into residency really suck. And without residency, I can't practice. Which sucks when you have $500,000 in debt. My only chance of getting in is at some crappy program working my butt off in a specialty I don't even like in the middle of freaking nowhere across the country where I would be completely alone without support. This wasn't what I signed up for. If only I were a US citizen, then I would have so many more options. I kind of wish I could just fall asleep and never wake up, but I would never do anything like that because then my parents would be stuck with all that debt because they co-signed the loans. Being a vet is great that you get to help, but other than that it's horrible. No sleep, anywhere from 06 emergencies in a night when you're on call, and you are on call on a rotation depending how many vets are qualified to do emergency work, so like every 3-4 weeks for 24 hours a day for a week straight. No family life because you're always leaving for an emergency or you work from 7 AM to 7 PM. And then people assume you make tons of money so they don't wanna pay their bills, or try to get things for free, or score pain meds so they can take them from their dogs, or the Animal Abuse and Humane Society cases, and then the heart-wrenching deaths and euthanasias. Some of these pets are children. Even adults as some birds live to be 80 years old, and some birds are as smart as a 4-year-old, and can talk. Euthanizing a bird that is begging me not to. I am now an emotionless human because otherwise I would lose my mind. I just withdrew from my classes after 5 years trying to finish a design bachelor's program. I was really passionate about it at first, but the design program sapped me of all passion I had for commercial art, and I realized I was just going through the motions to make my parents happy while being incredibly unhappy myself. I moved away from my family, out of the state, to get my foot in the door for a psychology career. Got a job as a receptionist at a mental health facility. My fiance and I had broken up. His friend got me the job. At that point, my supervisor began to scrutinize all of my work and told me that I would be fired if I kept forgetting tedious details. Not only was my boss on my butt, even when my co-worker made the same mistakes, but the clients were awful too. I was always getting yelled at because their therapist's next available appointment was too far away, or they'd call last minute for med refills after skipping out on their appointments. I got so depressed working that job, especially hearing about what the therapists had to deal with. I was anxious all the time. I cried almost every day. Quit after 6 months. Only good thing to come out of that job was that I met my husband. I worked my butt off to get into my dream acting school, one of the best in my country, only to be constantly belittled, told I'd never make it in the industry for arbitrary reasons, shamed and called unprofessional for my clothing choices. I had to work ridiculous 12+ hour days not including homework, and our teachers would say that if we didn't want to work in those conditions, working ourselves to sickness, being chronically sleep deprived, never seeing our friends and families, high levels of stress and anxiety, then we clearly weren't cut out for that line of work. I have since dropped out and met a ton of professionals who disagree with that mentality. Healthcare. The education process is self-filtering, as it's so rigorous that you really have to want it to succeed. Going in, I knew it was a flawed system, but it's disheartening to see the extent of the limitations and challenges within the network. Most of us go into this line of work with the best intentions, but medical facilities often prioritize profit margins over ethical business decisions. Read quantity versus quality, and, as a result, even the most compassionate workers face burnout at astounding rates. We face poor business administration, lack of governmental judiciary public support, and much of what we can or cannot do, at least here in the US, is dictated by private payer, for-profit insurance companies. I'm a mental health therapist and this is spot on for the counseling social work field as well. Worked my butt off to graduate with a BFA, summa cum laude, from the honors college of my school, with a double minor, and a published thesis. This literally means nothing in the real world. I can't find a job in my field, or any job that pays more than $15 an hour, in a city it's not very much, without going way more into debt to receive an MFA. I'm crap out of luck. I feel tricked. I worked for like 4 years to get the job I finally wanted. I got the promotion offer and the pay ended up being trash. It was one of those companies where you couldn't really reject an offer without upper management basically ending your career there. I accepted, and after about a month, it became 12 hours a day of non-stop work and constant crap from everyone. Insane stress, less money, zero job satisfaction. Really taught me a good lesson about understanding my goals a bit more before I strive so hard for them. I did. I won't go into specifics about what that dream was, but it doesn't really matter. Whatever it is, you are still climbing into your 1.5-ton vehicle every morning and sitting, idling in traffic for 30 minutes to an hour, and then sitting in an air-conditioned office for hours with hundreds of thousands of other people, over and over again, while the ecosphere around you literally burns to the ground. You watch in detached horror as things fall apart and self-medicate by climbing onto the hedonistic treadmill, an insatiable feedback loop of buying the next best release of something new, or even worse, settling down and starting a family and birthing children into what will undoubtedly be total, global ecological collapse. Much happier now despite the odd hours for idiot posting opportunities. Be the change you want to see in the world. Watching the world through a bitter lens only results in you suffering. Doesn't affect the rest of us. If you're unhappy, and from your wording it seems so, then change. Worked my butt off to finish in first place in a race. Told there was an amazing prize for winning, ended up getting born as a prize, and holy crap, is it a hellhole here. Got into a fantastic school, hated it. Took a job I loved for a year that had nothing to do with my major and no room to grow. Got my dream job, moved for it, love the job, hate the location. Trapped here insofar as I don't want to give up my job so soon into it. Miserable. Finally diagnosed severely depressed and on meds that help. Not all bad, and this is very simplified, but it happened. Tried to get a career in the game industry. Worst mistake of my life. Everybody there was awful. The work was tedious at the best of times, zero creative control, and stuck in an office all day. Not for me, thanks. Military. Got to do a really cool job, grow a beard, did crazy crap, learned all sorts of stuff, went to war a few times, one too many times. Initially I studied electrical engineering at university for the salary. Half a year in I started skipping classes, became a loner and ended up dropping out. Went through a phase of depression after, as I felt like I was going nowhere, but then decided to go back to uni and study a subject I have a passion for. Now it's almost a week in, I haven't tried to make any friends and I'm already started to get sick and tired of everything. Art. I worked every day of my life in art for 14 years and never did anything else, only to realize that I don't like it as much. People started to rob my pictures, they want to use me to ace art class and take credit for my work, and if I refuse they call me a jerk. I hate some family members now cause they would do the same thing, like WTF. I have skill, but what's the point now if I don't even like it as much? I spent 5 years going to school to be a mechanical engineer so too can work alongside my dad. I always loved going to work with cause I liked what he did. By the time I graduated I was so beaten up from all the learning and late nights that the interest I had in that field was gone. I had no desire to even want to try to get into it. My dad was pretty disappointed and still asks me to this day to give it a shot, but I just can't. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.